if we look outside of North America, a lot of other countries and all other jurisdictions have way more messed up economic systems, right? Yeah. I think for USDT, a lot of the hopefully this won't be banned and whatnot, but a lot of the Chinese officials were trying to move the money out. They
Mhm.
can't do it through regular wire transfer and whatnot.
Yeah.
So buy USDT, buy Bitcoin, and then once you're overseas, then you just cash out, right? So there's a lot of demand for like actually
Uh-huh.
moving your money outside of unstable jurisdictions. But at a certain point, like there will be some form of stability. And then what do you do with those stable coins, right?
This podcast is sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. When buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place. And unlike an exchange, which could freeze your account, you truly own all the crypto you buy. With Coin ATM Radar, you could find crypto ATMs and other services where you can buy and sell cryptocurrencies for cash. On their website, you can search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying, and you can also search by geo area, country, state, city. You can also check and compare actual current fees at different ATMs. If you want to find out more, head over to coinatmradar.com, which is COINATMRADAR.com.
So, hey, everyone. Welcome. Another consensus. I happened to be walking around the halls and ran into someone. Interview. How's it going? Would you mind introducing yourself and then what you do?
Yeah, my name is Jerry. I started doing the Bitcoin Bay meetups here in Toronto since 2014.
Mhm.
For a lot of the people in Bitcoin Cash, they might know me for shooting the shit and whatnot. But yeah, no, just holding down the city, welcoming everyone who's coming in, and hopefully everyone's having a great time.
Yeah. Now, I noticed, that logo on your hat. It's kind of like the Bitcoin logo, but it's green. First of all, why is it green? And then why is there like a moon in there or something? I've never
So
seen that before.
yeah, so this is well, obviously it's a Bitcoin Cash logo, and this is actually from good friends of mine, like Callisti and Jeremy from Bitcoin Cash. They're working on the Selene wallet,
Mhm.
and right now they actually have a crowdfunding campaign to help finance their next phase of development and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really cool. Met them last month in Washington D.C. at
Oh,
a
yeah.
Bitcoin Core meetup, sorry, a conference. And yeah, no, it was just like the Bitcoin Cash folks just crashing that party.
Yes, and I like the guys. I do have Celine on my phone and stuff. I wouldn't have minded going. I just could not pay money to go to MicroStrategy. I feel like that's like a cringe maxi level pilgrimage, and like I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But was it worth your time at least?
You know what? It's kind of funny because
That's a
I
no.
mean,
Just kidding.
well, you know what? I would say yes,
Yeah.
not for any sort of like productivity and whatnot, but just
Hmm.
to understand like what people are actually working on in Bitcoin Core, especially around the covenant side of things, right?
Or
So
Bitcoin knots. Although to be
that
fair, that was probably
that
all.
was afterwards. That was way. I mean, honestly, I was talking with them on the Twitter Spaces, like, "Yo, you guys had such great conversations about Bitcoin covenants and whatnot, and it just gets completely derailed by all these op returns, knots, whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
what the hell's going on here?"
Of course. So how have you been? This can't be your first consensus, is it?
So this is actually my second consensus.
Nice.
So because they're coming here to Toronto, I don't need to fly anywhere to travel and
Perfect.
whatnot, right? But last year I did go to Austin, and that was, well, beside Colorado 1 year, that was basically my first time actually doing a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
We do try to, in Toronto, we do try to have a lot of, activities going on, whether it's regular meetups, whether it's hackathons, whether it's like smaller conferences. I mean, this is absolutely huge, right?
Yeah,
But
of course.
we do actually have a yearly conference called the Blockchain Futures Conference.
Yeah.
And, like in previous years, we were at the Rebel nightclub, which is I think it's like the most popular nightclub
Mhm.
in Toronto. But yeah, and just trying to get all the energy up, just trying to bring people in and, just have a good time, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That was last year was my first consensus too, and it was it's way hotter than here, which I like this better, to be honest.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was like, all right, 30 degrees. And like today we're barely breaching above 25. So.
Perfect. Yeah. So, how are you finding consensus this year? As far as it, to me personally, it struck me that there's a lot of like very institutional, like 80% of the talks are on stable coins, and then the other like 15% are on how the role of regulation and this and that. And then there's like just a little sprinkling of other things. The only one I actually listened to was the privacy one, because Josh Swire from Electric Coin Company, Zcash, was speaking. I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be good. I'm gonna go to that one. But other than that, do you think it's more like that than last year? I think it's a little bit more institutional or whatever, or what do
You
you think?
know, one of the things that I've noticed about these more like general public
Mm-hmm.
conferences like Consensus is that, like the blockchain tech, it has a lot of good applications in other industry verticals.
Yeah.
But the problem, and I don't know if you caught Eric Trump's message earlier today, but even him, like for his family doing all this
Yeah.
real estate stuff, they're getting harassed by the banks.
Mm-hmm. Of
Right?
course.
They're potentially getting their accounts. So it's like for us, like people are actually working on the tech, working on like more useful stuff. What are we supposed to do? We can
Yeah.
play by the books all we want and still get shut down because some arbitrary reason, right? So I think like the regulatory aspect needs to be addressed. Whether people want to say like screw the government or full on libertarian and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, like they still have the majority of all the actual control and power and stuff, capital, all that kind of stuff. So at some point you have to deal with that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is good to have a good mix of both the tech side and also where exactly people are trying to apply the tech into real life situations.
Have you found a lot of the remnant of people with cypherpunk values and things like that here? Have you found like a good mix of those people? Or are they kind of completely missing, or what?
Some, right? There are some, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously, like for the ones who are local, it's a lot easier to just show up, right?
Mm.
But yeah, no, definitely, it's not necessarily like a cyberpunk focus
Yeah.
event. Just because like there's so much other interest and sponsors coming in, it's like why not, right?
Yeah, for sure. This is my first time in Canada, by the way, on Monday.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It feels right, like at home. I didn't have to switch my data plan. All my plugs work. Other than a few more sorries and beans and stuff, it's pretty much all the same.
It's only a few hour drive up north for
Yes.
you.
Yes, it's actually, I could have driven here. It's like 8 to 12 hours drive or
Ah,
something.
okay.
Um, what's the crypto scene like in Toronto? You have a lot of meetups. Are there any businesses that take it? Like how do you find it geared?
Yeah, so Toronto. Well, I can't say for the rest of Canada, but for Toronto at the very least, it's fairly interesting. I mean, obviously, like you have people like Vitalik, who is based in Toronto and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the early, like educational outreach, those kind of meetups, workshops, really just geared towards getting people to actually work on the tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a lot of like community grassroots efforts and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with Canada overall is that, and I've often joked about this, well,
Mm-hmm.
it might be a very serious joke, but we have a lot of good talent,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't stay here, right? We have Waterloo, we have University of Waterloo, University of Toronto. I think it was like, I heard there's about like 25% or like a good portion, 20-25% of the people going to Silicon Valley each year are from like this corridor.
Mm.
Right? So there's obviously a lot of talent, but they're all being underpaid. And for anyone that wants to do any sort of business, the way I describe it is have your programming, have your tech team here, but your BD be elsewhere, right? In the States, in Europe, just don't be in Canada.
Mm.
Right? And it's kind of unfortunate that way, but
Is
yeah,
that because of regulations?
oh yeah, 100%, 100% regulations, right? If I want to put things in a less polite way, we're basically run by industries of cartels, right? In Quebec, they have the maple syrup cartel. In Ontario, you have the dairy cartels and whatnot, right? So like, yeah, it's very hard to actually, be an entrepreneur and actually grow the business here.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to essentially take advantage of all the, the brilliant talents that we actually do have. And then any sort of like business development and whatnot, go to Europe, go to America, go anywhere else.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. Have you seen much change in the kind of blockchain and crypto attitudes over the last several years? Because like, for example, in the US, mostly legally, everything was just ignored for like as long as I can remember. And then a few years ago during the Biden administration, no laws really changed, but the law enforcement started to crack down and arrest friends of mine who were like trading crypto and stuff. And then the SEC is of course the big one that started attacking these companies. And then now it seems like that's all over and it's like boomtown in America once again. But what is it like? So there was that definite wave of like, oh, things got really bad and everything's great now. Have
Yeah.
you seen how has it changed in Canada since you've been involved in crypto here?
So I'll tell a few firsthand stories that I heard from
Yeah.
people. So we have, very, very similar regulators as the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it's kind of like a series of rotating heads, right?
Mm.
The people who have been in there who, got those early education, got caught up to speed about what all this blockchain technology is about, they don't stick around. They go off to the private sector, do their own thing. And quite honestly, I don't blame them.
Yeah,
Right,
of course.
because
You gotta get
it's so
paid.
slow. So they bring in new people, and then for the new people, they're like, "Oh, what the hell is all this stuff?" So you just have
Mm.
to repeat all this stuff again and again and again, and it's very, very hard. Like even for a lot of the exchanges, right? They started out wanting to, be fully compliant, regulation, all that kind of stuff. I think Virgo CX, earlier this year, they were saying they're moving away from the custodial centralized exchange model. They're just going to
Mm.
focus on DeFi, DEXs, wealth management for the, accredited investors and whatnot. Because it just does not make sense to keep on, one, paying exorbitant amount of money to regulators, and two, having to deal with new changing heads. As I was asking them, it's like, well, what exactly are you guys doing? But you guys just explained all this a few years ago, right?
Mhm.
Nothing has really changed. Like, no, we want to know because we're
Different
new
people.
people. Right.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. We mentioned about DeFi because of the regulations. Have you found, or what do you think? Do you think regulations are actually maybe good for crypto in some way? This is the devil's advocate position
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it pushes people to do like the right way, to build for principle, to build anti-fragile, to build decentralized, as opposed to, safe and out in the open and just big companies like anything because you're going to be treated well.
Yeah, like in my view, I don't think the current regulatory bodies are good
Mhm.
forever, right?
Of
It's
course.
good in the time and moments. And so what I mean by that is, like especially between the period of 2017 and
Hmm.
2020 before the COVID and all that kind of stuff, you have a lot of institutional players who really, when they're putting money in, when they're investing into the space, they're really just investing into their own education, right? So in that aspect, like you do want some sort of safeguards and rails for them. But, after that, it's like once you get comfortable with the technology, once you get comfortable using it, the regulatory stuff, it's not very useful, right? Like we've just seen
Hmm.
Coinbase. Whoops, all this account got hacked, but that's all okay. That's okay it's all good for the regulators, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's what kind of phase of adoption are we actually at? And are we actually caring for the end user, the end consumers? Or is it some intermediary in between? Right.
Yeah. Do you think there's going to be a little bit of blockchain envy in this country because things are getting are starting to heat up in the U.S. as far as like, even though one of the president's sons is here today talking his stuff, like it's pretty much, it's very booming in the U.S. right now.
Mm-hmm.
We should thank God because I remember the time when all the wallets and service providers were like, cannot work in North Korea, in Iran, and the U.S. and Venezuela. It's like, oh God. And
You're forgetting Quebec.
oh,
They also have the province of Quebec,
the province.
randomly. It's
Well,
like,
also the province is like New York, the state of New York,
right,
because
right, right.
like we're just getting some deals done with Flexa and the Flexa payment app, and they allegedly, again, we'll see, will support Dash in 49 states, but not New York. We got to figure out New York's nonsense.
Yeah,
So
the bit license is always
yeah,
messy,
do you
right?
think there's going to be jealousy or a little bit of like, okay, we have to make things a little nicer here so that we don't lose all of our talent straight south of the border?
I don't think so, because Canada has an infamous reputation for, like, our biggest export is pretty much human capital. Right?
Is
Like,
that why
spare
there's
the
so few
resources.
people here?
Well, I mean, it's also cold, right? So people don't
Yeah,
want to be in the cold. But
true.
yeah, no, it's, like more opportunities just naturally throughout the past decades. It's always been like this.
Hmm.
But, obviously with here's the thing about the States, right? Like, as long as the relations are good, you can always have dual citizenships. Like, you don't have to,
Yeah.
physically, well, you know what I mean, right? It's a lot
Yeah.
easier to get down there as opposed to, somewhere else in the world. But again, it's like the Canadian economy is so, they're tying so many like strings behind their own backs that it doesn't matter if you're in blockchain or AI or anything else. The default option should always be to like find bigger markets,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
I mean, like there's a lot of like the like quote unquote old money in the system right now, and quite honestly, they really don't care about adopting all this tech because it doesn't benefit them.
Because why?
They already have the market, right? If they adopt it, it's just additional cost. That's like, well, this is our money anyways,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So that's kind of like the issue on that part. What I would say is that if a more significant and more serious amount of people actually just start getting out and whatnot, or if there's systemic collapse or some sort of like crumbling or whatnot, right?
Mhm.
Then perhaps like there'll be more incentives to actually keep the talent here, but otherwise a lot of it is just for like just for show. Right?
Interesting. Uh, Stablecoin thing. Stablecoins being obviously the the subject of the day in these kinds of
Mm-hmm.
circles. Like, oh, that's everything everyone wants to talk about.
USD1, that's what Eric Trump was part of, on that
USD
panel.
one. USD. What is USD one? Because
I have no idea.
some other project was putting USD two on base, and I'm like, is that related to one? Is that like anyway? So with
Some sort of stable coin.
with all the proliferation of stablecoins, do you think that's like? Do you think we're headed towards like a dark era where people stop using scarce money? Not that they really started too much, but like to where we're just going to perpetuate the fiat system? Or do you think it's just sort of a temporary thing as like the world gets on board, but then we're still going to see scarce digital cash as something that people like and use?
I mean, yeah, like money overall, it has to have some sort of scarcity. You need to have like that energy input to actually extract value out of, right? Because that's how
Yeah.
people are actually measuring everything.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like why not just use the Zimbabwe dollars, right? Or Venezuelan bolivars.
Yeah, they don't have the Zimbabwe dollar anymore. I think it died.
Well, we still have the dollar bills, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm sure you can still trade it for like 50 cents here and there, but there has to be some measurements. It's very similar to like proof of work, right?
Uh-huh.
It's just that we need to store that work in some medium. So right now, for a lot of the stable coins, like obviously, if we look outside of North America, a lot of other countries, other jurisdictions have way more messed up economic systems, right? Yeah, I think for USDT, a lot of the hopefully this won't be banned and whatnot, but a lot of the Chinese officials were trying to move the money out. They can't do it through regular wire transfer and whatnot.
Yeah.
So buy USDT, buy Bitcoin, and then once you're overseas, then you just cash out, right? So so there's a lot of demand for like actually moving your money outside of unstable jurisdictions. But at a certain point, like there will be some form of stability. And then what do you do with those stable coins, right? So,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and also it's kind of funny that you mentioned like Tether on that. There's like the map of Europe of like, is it like potato Europe and tomato Europe? And I kind of feel like the world is sort of segmented into USDC world and USDT world.
right.
Kind of like the fringes around there. Yeah. So what are you most looking forward to of this year, the rest of the year? Is there a conference you want to go to or something, or an event like maybe a new tech release or something?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of events, this is basically the big event, right?
Mhm.
So we had the Blockchain Futures Conference on Tuesday, and then Consensus Wednesday to Friday. So absolutely jam-packed week. On the tech side, and I think I mentioned this to you, but I'm actually working on a Bitcoin Covenant wallet on Bitcoin Cash, which I think is the world's first Bitcoin Covenants wallet. So other people should definitely catch up at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Cash up.
Catch
So
up,
it's not
catch
too
up,
bad.
all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just really, like, you know, having the ability to already enforce where the money is going to go to without caring about the private key aspect.
Yeah.
Because we're seeing too many examples of, like hackers or, people just like spoofing the front end. It looks like you're going to pay to one address, but in the back end, it's completely somewhere else, right? So with these covenants, the destination, the amount, even sometimes, like the actual inputs are fully determined in such that even if your private keys do get compromised, it really doesn't matter too much, right?
Yeah.
So trying to work with some of these, like exchanges, custodial solution providers, all those other app developers and whatnot to integrate it. And the reason why I'm focusing on the mobile wallet side is because for a lot of people using crypto, it's a very dumb way of using it, right?
Yeah.
Your wallet, you scan to one address, you pay to that one address. Is that it?
Yeah.
Right? It's not that much more, right? So I do want to, get that experience to like the everyday users and whatnot. It's like, hey, there's a different model. There's a much bigger world in the world of blockchain crypto than whatever the wallets are currently providing for people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh shit, just check my time. It's shill o'clock. You got to shill something. What are you going to shill as we wrap up here?
Bitcoin Cash is the real Bcashers, not this knots people stuff.
Yeah.
There's some, like, for some reason, like Bitcoin Core people are like, knots. They're like trying to be Bcash. It's like, what are you guys talking about?
Pale imitators.
Very pale
feline
imitation.
munching imitators.
Right? So yeah, Bitcoin Cash is the real Bcashers. Don't let the knots people fool you.
Yeah, Bitcoin Cash is the real segregationist or splitter movement.
There you
real
go.
Forkers.
There you go.
We're the real forkers.
Hey, and when we want to fork, we actually just fork off and not try to like hold the network back and whatnot, right?
Yes, for sure. All right, well, yeah, thanks very much for chatting. This has been great.
Thank you, Joel, and come up north anytime, right?
Yes,
it's only a few hour drive.
I'll be back, maybe Montreal next.
Absolutely.
We'll see.
Hey, if you're in Montreal, I'll definitely make a trip up there.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Thanks so much.